All the time.
And all the time?
God is good.
Must confess beforehand that I'm not so good at preaching while standing at the same place. I prefer to move, but I will try for today at least. A German contemporary philosopher by the name Arthur Schopenhauer says that a human person becomes what he or she eats. So that, by that token, if you eat githeri, you become githeri. If you eat mukimo, you become mukimo. You think mukimo and the list can be prolonged. In a sense, I want to say, using the same analogy, that many times we become the different attitudes that we cultivate, the different attitudes that we imbibe. The attitudes that we cultivate, in a sense, derive from the experiences that we go through. Could be in the family setting, could be in the religious community setting, could be in class. So that when you used to being told that you are good for nothing bitch, you're useless, then you begin to think yourself useless. When you're told that you can't do anything, and repeatedly, and especially from initial stages of your development, then it will be imminent that you grow into thinking yourself useless, and then you act useless for that matter. That's why, for this particular day, I want us to, candidly and rather profoundly talk about attitude. As I already mentioned, attitudes are cultivated from what goes inside us in terms of our experiences. But the fundamental thing is that, whatever you go through in terms of your experience, it is not to be upon you to determine, to choose whether what is communicated in your life is going to shape your orientation, is going to shape how you behave, is going to shape your mental calculation, if you like, or not. Because there is one thing that people look at you in a particular way, then they communicate certain messages, certain cues into your life. And it is another thing to be cognizant of the fact that there is a particular cue, particular message that God has also communicated to your life. And therefore, it's going to be upon you to choose, do I want my life to be guided and controlled by what people say about me? Feedback, positive and negative notwithstanding, or I want to be guided by what God has said about me. And there are verses in the scriptures. From the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, you see that God, having created man, he breathes upon the nostril of man the breath of life. Then man becomes a living creature, not just mounds of earth again, but a living creature. A living creature to mean that the creature that is able to impact the lives of other people. A person in whose presence you will be able to have your life impacted rather positively. And therefore, if God has communicated his blessings upon us by breathing the breath of life upon us, therefore it is going to be essential for us to be able to pursue, to discern that which God has communicated to my life. Because it is that which is going to make me to be an effective instrument of God's consolation in the first place. If anything, the purpose to which you created all of us, absolutely, is to give others the capacity to have. And in giving others the capacity to have, it means that I should be an instrument that should inspire. That's what today, rather from 1978 to date, we're talking about transformational leadership. a leadership that is visionary, a leadership that is a people-centered leadership where you put yourself in the shoe of the other person and therefore to consider how you're going to raise somebody up from a certain level, from down to a middle ground, and then from a middle ground to a higher ground. Now, it is not going to be possible for us to be a people who elevate others. It is not going to be possible for us to be transformational leadership agents, not unless we imbibe proper attitudes. And by proper attitudes, I mean recognizing the fact that whoever stands before you, whoever is before me, is a loved child of God, created in the image and likeness of God, possesses the DNA of God, and not a photocopy. Tumsifu Yesu Kristo. Turn to the person next to you and tell him that you are not a photocopy. Thank you. You are a true copy. And if you are not a photocopy, then it means that you should always feel obliged, should feel that it is a responsibility that falls within you to make every other person you come around experience the fact that they are not photocopies. They are loved children of God. They are blessed. They are proper true DNA of God. And therefore, as true DNA of God, whatever, irrespective of the difficulties, the challenges that they go through, they will be able to soar up, to live up to that experience. That's why the first reading, Prophet Isaiah invites us to something that is very important. Isaiah tells us that there should not be within us, in our midst, there shouldn't be any oppression, there shouldn't be any accusations, pointing of fingers. Why? Because if you recognize that the man or woman who is standing, walking before you, is a creature of God, created in the image and likeness of God, is a fellow sojourner in a journey where struggles, a journey that is wrought on struggles, then you will be able to empathize. Put yourself in his or her shoe and then say, I got the obligation, because he or she is a fellow sojourner with me, I got the obligation to come down to his or her level and raise him up. Now, for this to happen, we need to shun, therefore, other messages which may have been communicated into our lives by our family members, by our superiors, by our leaders, by our teachers, by whomsoever we've interacted with. Messages that go contrary to the fact to be a loved child of God, blessed, a bearer of the DNA of God. That's why if you look, for instance, we give a parallel with Exodus 3:4-6. We see that God wants to make Moses, for instance, be that transformational leader, to go to Egypt to deliver the people of Israel. But then Moses, aware of what has been communicated into his life in terms of the misgivings, in terms of the challenges, in terms of the orgies that he's participated in. And therefore, these things that have been communicated into his life, rather than he's communicated himself into his very life, holds him back, he's not able to freely move, protect the assignment that has been given to him by God. And therefore, God invites him that Moses, move no more, for the ground that you're standing on is holy ground. Take off your shoes, for the ground you're stepping on is a holy ground. The ground of our experiences, the ground of the happenings in our lives, the ground of joys and sorrows that have entered into our spaces. That in internalizing them, discerning them, looking at them from the perspective of hope and of despair, then we'll be able to be a positive-minded people, a people who are able to communicate positive vibes in the lives of other people, therefore necessitating their movement from lower levels to higher levels. If you're not able to interiorly engage the experiences that we've been through, the negative messages that have been communicated into our lives, then we become negative, like Arthur Schopenhauer says. And when we become negative, we become poisonous. We become virulent to an extent that whoever comes around us lives worse than they came to us. That is why in the gospel text we see Luke presents Jesus as that perfect transformational leader, a person who is not ashamed to associate with the ostracized within the society. He's not ashamed to associate with those who have been put to the fringes of the society. He goes right to Levi. And of course, Levi, upon getting the information, Levi, just like in Mark 8:1-10 that we got the gospel text of 6th Sunday of ordinary time, where we saw the leprous man reaching out and saying that if you will make me clean, that in knowing what goes within me, in knowing what has been communicated into my life, I will be able to call it by its name. And therefore, if that moment of kairos comes, the moment of salvation, the moment of consolation, then I will be able to outrightly come out and say, from without mincing my words, that my situation is this. This is where I am. But in Mark 10:31, Francis would say, I want to see again. Therefore, the question for me and you is, do you know where you are? Do you know the messages that predominate in your life, that have been communicated into your lives by the systems, by the powers that be, by the family context, and the religious communities, and whatever places of work where we are? Are we able, therefore, to call such messages by their names? And therefore, when that kairos moment comes, the moment of consolation, and therefore to be able to reach out to him who is able to help and say, this is my situation, this is what I want to be helped to get rid of. Levi was not ashamed. He didn't give a damn to invite this moment, the kairos moment, Jesus into his own home. The opportunity came, he seized the opportunity and went to the extent of bringing Jesus home. He didn't so much bother, he didn't give a damn as to what people will say. How often do we get ourselves calmed down by what people say about us to an extent that we may not reach out to, or rather fail to reach out for those moments of consolation? I love the fact that people talked and talked and talked and talked, but his spirit was not dampened by his liver. Therefore, I want to pray to God that we too, irrespective of the different struggles, the different humiliations, the different sorrows that we got in our lives, one may always be able to reach out to those proper opportunities that they make us be able to make meaning out of those sorrows and shaming instances, incidences of our lives. And then too, that when if people talk, that we may hold the conviction that it's about me, it's about restoring myself to what I'm supposed to be, and not so much about what people say I should be. As it were, Lent is a period of renewal. Lent is a period of reintegrating ourselves to what God has created us to be, the purpose which God has created us to be, giving others a capacity to love. But for me to give the others capacity to love, and in our case through leadership abilities, I got to know myself. But therefore the question for us is, do you know who you are? Tumsifu Yesu Kristo.